So we cut back and forth between Mindy trying to stand up for the shy doctor named Candace against the overbearing and overconfident TJ, and Danny trying to create enough willpower within himself to not read the diary. And I feel like there are a lot of people out there that would just put the diary away and not read it. I'll be honest, I don't know that I could resist the temptation. What about you out there? Would you read the diary or no? Let me know in the comments. Welcome back to another episode of The Rank. I'm John, and today we're going to be ranking the next episode of the Mindy Project. Now, for those of you who are new to the show, I'm just going to give you a brief agenda here. We start with the potent notables, which are just a couple interesting facts or tidbits that I found out about the episode or series. Then I do the episode overview, which is just me talking about everything that happened in the episode, so spoiler alert. And then I do the rank, where I rank the episode based on 5 categories on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best, all to find out what are the best sitcoms of all time. And today we're going to be ranking the 8th episode of the 3rd season of the Mindy Project, titled Diary of a Mad Indian Woman, written by Lang Fisher and directed by Alex Hardcastle. All right, let's find out how this one stacks up, starting with the potent notables.
Potent notables.
So the 8th episode of the 3rd season aired Tuesday, November 18th, 2014. Mindy dropped back down from 2.5 million viewers to 2.4 million. And then we get another potent notable here, which is not very potent, maybe even not notable, but here it is. Mindy recommends the show Blackish in the episode. Andrew Batchelor, who guest stars in this episode, also starred in Blackish. Those are the potent notables. Let's go to the episode overview. Now, I was on board for this episode right from the jump because it starts with a great joke. Oh my God, Danny, she gone, and I think Ben Affleck did it. So Mindy's reading a book when she says this, and it's very clear that she's reading the book Gone Girl. To me, that was a great start. I love a good reference. So as we dive into the episode, we get some cute relationship discussions, like which side of the bed they want to sleep on. And they both want to sleep on the right. Although Danny has a resolution for this, he suggests they sleep head to toe. Then they both can sleep on the right. But Mindy starts tickling his feet, which results in him kicking her in the face. Danny, concerned, is gonna say, "Are you all right?" Mindy responds, "No, Ray Rice." Now this just cracked me up, but this is such like a topical reference from the time. And I wonder if people watching now would actually get this one. And I'm saying it like it's some kind of cryptic inside joke, but it's just that Ray Rice, who was a Baltimore Ravens running back at the time, knocked out his then fiance, Janae Palmer, in an Atlantic City elevator, which was all caught on camera. I mean, it was really bad, but the joke was great. So into the office we go, and Mindy has a sparkling pink eye patch on. Ironically, this is the second woman that Danny has dated that wears an eye patch. But really, it's just a ploy to get Danny to stay at her place. And it works. But right after Danny agrees to stay at her place, Beverly is going to interrupt and say, "Hey, Mindy, that woman you made out with is calling and asking for you." Turns out, though, we've got a new wrinkle and plot point that's just been established in this episode. That point is that apparently the hospital that Dr. Fishman is the new director of and where Shulman and Associates do their deliveries is apparently a teaching hospital. Not only that, but all the doctors that deliver babies there are expected to teach the interns if they want to continue to see their patients there. Now, how will this new plot device impact this episode? Well, Mindy, of course, has not been doing her rounds. Peter has been covering for her. And Dr. Fishman assumes that Peter's been forging her signature this whole time. But as it turns out, Jeremy is the one that forges everybody's signatures, which Mindy just casually mentions to Dr. Fishman on this call. Here's the thing though, Dr. Fishman is pissed now. And she says, "Mindy, you have to teach tonight, or else the only thing that you'll be delivering are boxes." Why? Because you'll be working at the post office. Of course, this show isn't one to miss a beat, so this whole forgery aspect is going to come into play later. The problem is that this was the night that Danny is supposed to sleep at Mindy's house, so Mindy doesn't want to do rounds because she doesn't want to miss it. So she gets Tamara to cover for her, which was really goofy, and we see Tamara doing like a stiff British accent or like a posh accent.
To man the helm of this exquisite ship called your education.
Naturally, Dr. Fishman is going to catch this and call Mindy and be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" So Mindy ends up having to leave, which means that Danny is going to be in her apartment alone. So now we have Mindy teaching at the hospital interspersed with Danny finding things to do in and being annoyed by Mindy's apartment. But while Mindy is dealing with an annoying know-it-all doctor-to-be named TJ, Danny is going to stumble on 2 things of interest. He hears something buzzing and it's very clearly intimated that it's a sex toy of some sort, and he says, "Oh, Ma has the same neck massager." But because of this buzzing, he's also going to find the other thing of importance, number 2 here, Mindy's journal. So we cut back and forth between Mindy trying to stand up for the shy doctor named Candace against the overbearing and overconfident TJ, and Danny trying to create enough willpower within himself to not read the diary. And I feel like there are a lot of people out there that would just put the diary away and not read it. I'll be honest, I don't know that I could resist the temptation. What about you out there? Would you read the diary or no? Let me know in the comments. Well, Danny chooses to read the diary, and there are a lot of glowing things that Mindy says about Danny. Naturally, we get no mention of any of Mindy's exes. How fortunate for Danny. No Josh, no Cliff, no Casey, nobody. Just all about Danny. And I get it. But one would assume he was probably going to read things that he wouldn't want to read in this thing. So Danny just keeps reading and reading while Mindy is dressing down TJ. And while he's reading, Morgan shows up for a fun callback to an earlier joke in the episode. You see, he had mentioned that the only thing he gets to go over to Mindy's apartment for is for turn down service. Which felt like a throwaway line, but here he is doing turn down service. But he startles Danny, who spills his wine all over Mindy's diary. So that's a disaster. There's no way he's getting out of this one, except we've just recently established that Jeremy is a good forger. So Danny comes up with the idea to have Jeremy forge the entire diary. It does take some convincing, but Jeremy does eventually agree to do it, especially when he realizes that the fallout of Mindy and Danny breaking up would be like the Falklands all over again, which is a very goofy and very British joke. As for Mindy's teaching side quest, Dr. Fishman is now waiting in Mindy's office because old TJ has filed a sexism complaint against Mindy. And Dr. Fishman is very upset. She can't have her hospital being known as a man-hating, mean lesbian hospital. I mean, at her last hospital, she was voted nicest lesbian. Dr. Fishman tells her to fix it immediately, and so Mindy meets up with TJ, and TJ is like, look, I'm not going to be bullied by this oppressive, matriarchal. Well, we don't get to hear him finish because Mindy knocks him off the treadmill at that point. But I will say it does feel very male to have the power for millennia, and the moment it feels like there's an area where we don't, we immediately cause problems so that we can get the power back. And oh man, some of you are just gonna hate that little jab I just made. I'll be curious if you prove me right though. I guess we'll see in the comments. But TJ is convinced that Mindy is helping Candace because Mindy sees herself in Candace. But Mindy's like, no, I see myself in you. And actually, that really tracks. I was thinking while watching this episode, I bet Mindy would have been a lot like this guy. And then they said it. So nice bit of conditioning and follow through on that one. Look, TJ has worked really hard to get where he's at. He paid his way through college, where he was #1 in his class at Harvard, by the way, by cleaning dishes and selling an app to Microsoft, which I thought was a great joke. But Mindy makes a really good point here and has a really good line that if you're a doctor who can't get along with anyone, then you're not a good doctor, and convinces him to apologize to Candace. Then we head straight back to the diary writing sessions. Jeremy's gonna say, whoa, and Danny's gonna be like, what? What did you read? The list where she ranks the races? I know, it's chilling. But that's not what he read. We end up getting a story via Mindy's diary about this time when she thought Danny was about to propose to her, but was really just entering into a diatribe about voting against de Blasio. But what we find out is that she has an ultimatum for herself in the diary. She says they've been together for 7 months, and if he doesn't propose by Christmas, she's gonna move on. Of course, this is gonna feel to Danny like she's putting a lot of pressure on him, but this wasn't meant for his consumption, so she really hasn't. So we cut back over to the hospital with Mindy teaching again. By the way, Peter has been in a lot of these scenes, but he hasn't really done or said anything of note, really, so that's why I haven't mentioned him. Anyway, Peter and Mindy get to see TJ apologizing to Candace, which is TJ starting to apologize and Candace jumping him. Then we get an unexpected scene that works, but just felt like it was kind of out of nowhere, where Danny is now at his mom's house fixing something with her sink, and he's talking to her about the ultimatum that he read in Mindy's diary. And she's like, you should break up with her, which I was kind of surprised to hear, but then she actually has a good reasoning for it. She's like, she's old. You can practically hear her last eggs rattling around in her when she walks. Her point being she's too old to string along. So she says to Danny, if you don't think you're going to marry her, if you don't think you're going to propose, then you should just break up with her and not string her along. And this, of course, makes me, and I'm sure the rest of the audience, feel worried, which I'm guessing was the point. But while he's there, Mindy's going to text him that she's had a rough day and she just wants to go home, and if he wants to stay there, he can. So this sends Danny rushing back to the office to see if the diary is finished yet, which it is. Meanwhile, Mindy is flabbergasted by TJ being just a brand new puppy to Candace, and Candace not being able to focus because she's swooning for TJ. Mindy's actually going to pull Candace aside and be like, what are you doing, man? You're never going to be the best if you get distracted by boys. And Candace is like, well, if being the best means I'm a bossy, stressed out spinster, then no thanks. Wow, Candace. And Mindy's like, oh, you had that one locked and loaded, huh? It's a good back and forth, and Mindy's basically just like, I'm done with this. Then we hear Peter say she's aggravated and she's calling it a day work-wise. This will happen a lot. So Mindy's now going to text Danny and say, I'm on my way, I'll be home in like 10 minutes, which means Danny is going to all-out sprint back to Mindy's apartment. He does end up getting a little bit of breathing room when Dr. Fishman stops Mindy to tell her that she thought she did a good job teaching. Candace didn't work out, but she did end up mentoring somebody else. And Mindy's going to take a stab at who she means by saying, all along, the person I was mentoring was me. Then the fantastic response from Dr. Fishman, no, that's stupid. It was TJ. She mentored TJ. The rest of the episode is basically the race home. Will Danny get to her apartment before Mindy does? It's close, but Mindy ends up saving him a little bit more time as she stops at not one, but 2 hot dog vendors on the way home. Danny climbs the fire escape, goes through her window, puts the diary back in her nightstand, runs back, and is in the kitchen right as Mindy is opening the door. Mindy, seeing him sweating and out of breath, assumes that he's been masturbating. But Danny's gonna end up giving himself away a little bit by saying, you're putting so much pressure on me, when she was asking if he was gonna stay or not. And she's basically like, look, I'm fucking tired. Stay or go. Decide, I don't care. Of course, she just means tonight, but the implications are larger, and he says he's going to go. It's kind of a sad response, and, I'm sure we're all kind of worried when it happened, but the audience gets to rest easy at least for one more week, because he comes back and chastises Mindy for not locking the door. But that's the whole episode. Let's see how it ranked.
A rank.
So the rank is where I rank the episode based on 5 categories: story, acting, dialogue, episode coherence, and character relatability. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best, and then I have a laugh counter where I tally up the amount of times it made me laugh. 1 point per laugh out loud gets added to the score. But before I dive into the rankings, I just want to say if you're enjoying this episode, please leave a like down below. It really does help me out. But without further ado, the first category is story. And essentially, this story is about the invisible pressures of a relationship, right? Mindy's putting pressure on herself, really, but because Danny ends up seeing her inner thoughts via diary, he now feels that pressure too. Plus the B story of teaching at the hospital, which was fine. I gave it a 4. That brings us to acting, and I thought the acting was excellent in this one. Actually, whoever they got for Candace and TJ, I thought were great guest actors. I also really enjoyed that final emotional beat at the end, where more was being said in subtext, was really well done as well. So I gave it a 5. So let's go to dialogue. Always funny. It's what I say every time about this show. They actually seem to hit us with fewer jokes in this one, but they pretty much all landed. So even though I suspect that my laugh counter is lower in this one than the last one, I think the writing was actually better in this one. I gave it a 4.5. That brings us to episode coherence. The teaching hospital thing really threw me. That's a tough thing to just suddenly add to the show without any explanation. And by explanation, I mean an explanation of why we hadn't heard about this for the previous 50 plus episodes. I think it could have been as easy as a throwaway line like, oh, Fishman wants to turn it into a teaching hospital. Or you could have said that you were switching hospitals and it was to a teaching one. Of course, then you'd have to explain why Fishman was still there, or you just have to pick somebody else that wasn't Fishman. I don't know. It just felt slightly ill-conceived. Character-wise, I thought it was great, at least for Mindy and Danny. The rest of the cast had no real arc in this episode, but that's fine. So I gave it a 3. That brings us to character relatability. The whole diary thing was super relatable in my opinion. I could definitely see having trouble with the temptation of it. I could also relate to Mindy's teaching issue with TJ. People that arrogant you want to take down a notch. But then I can also relate to the idea that TJ has a chip on his shoulder because it's a female dominant profession and he wants to prove that he belongs. I thought it was a really relatable episode. I gave it a 5. So some up and down rankings, but mostly up. Wouldn't take much of a laugh counter for this to stay in the top 3 tiers. And as you may know, Mindy Project usually gets me a pretty decent amount of times, and it did this time. It got me 17 times. So that puts the grand total up to a 38.5, which means it's in the holy grail. As for the series average, that goes to a 37, continuing its climb up the holy grail. And if you're ranking along with me, please drop your scores in the comments. I'd love to see what you all thought, and especially with the laugh counter, I want to find out if I laugh more than the average person, I guess. So thanks for listening and or watching. Check out my other Mindy Project episodes or any of my other sitcom or movie episodes. Remember to subscribe, comment, and like. For up-to-date rankings, you can check out therankpodcast.com. You can also email me there at john@therankpodcast.com. And if you really want to support the show, you can become a patron at patreon.com/therankpodcast. But I will leave you with this. So I found a joke that got cut from the show. Now, it got cut from the show, but it's not too good for the rank.
With incredibly low standards.
So after a particularly wordy portion of the diary, Danny looks up annoyed and says, "Diary? More like diarrhea."
I'd just like to apologize for that.
I think that that's the worst one I've done. But right after Danny agrees to stay at Mindy's place that night, Beverly's going to interrupt and say,
Cut!
But right after Danny agrees to stay at her place, Beverly is going to interrupt and say, hey, that woman you kissed is calling for you. No, damn it.
Cut!
But right after Danny... Fuck.
That's okay. Take your time.